And you're very welcome back to another episode. I think it's episode 10 of season 4 here of the League of Ireland Women's podcast on Final Whistle with myself, Breifne Earley, and of course, Aaron Clarke. Aaron, it's been an amazing weekend. Victory for Cork against Shamrock Rovers, 2-1 down in Turner's Cross at the weekend. Probably the game, or at least the result of the weekend, but Cork well worth that win. Plenty of other action. Athlone with a big win down in Wexford. They've kept their fine form up at the top of the table, while Galway and Shells both enjoyed. Galway were out. Shells had a big win against DLR Waves as well. We'll talk about that later on. Sligo Rovers Bows were scoreless in the showgrounds, and Treaty United and Peamount left it really late, but Ellen Dolan with a great strike to win it for Peamount as well. Your thoughts the weekend? Did you get to see any games?
I watched majority of Shells and DLR. I watched nearly all of. Well, I watched the second half of the Cork City game. I'd watched the first half of the Peamount game, and I got a good bit of the Wexford game. Interesting weekend in terms of results. We said last week on the podcast, I said last week I thought Cork could get something out of that game, and they were full value for the win for me. I thought they were a really hungry side, and it was a really good result for them. I like the way they bounced back, especially after when they go ahead. Rovers equalised. You start to think it's a bit of a sticky one. Rovers could come on and score 2 or 3, but they got to go pretty quickly. Some poor defending from Rovers. I think if you look back at the weekend, there was some really nice strikes. The one thing I will say is I was really impressed, and you texted me on Saturday about this as well. The Athlone goal against Wexford, I was really impressed by how Jesse Rasmussen cut the ball out. Ball went straight wide to Maddie Gibson. They go forward, get the ball into the box, and boom, in the back of the net. The transition play was superb.
Yeah, because they moved from being like in trouble almost with a player
and
over.
That cut out past.
And it was the pass left, and I was looking at it as I was texting you. I was about to say, this Athlone are looking really good here, and I held off, and then the phase of play developed into a goal, and I was just thinking there's something a little bit extra about Athlone this year, and I really like the way things are shaping up for them.
Yeah, they've been very good, and like the thing is, the performance for Athlone, it wasn't a 100% performance, but they still ground out a result. Wexford struggling with that little bit, still struggling to get that bit of consistency. Like you think of the pass even that was cut out from Avenir and Clancy, like you'd expect that sort of pass not to be cut out from Clancy, but the way Athlone went was superb. Like it's difficult times at Wexford, it's difficult times at Shamrock Rovers. You're thinking Sligo and Bows getting a 0-0 draw. We'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of Sarah, but that was the sort of results that Sligo will probably be happy to get a point. Bows will be more disappointed not to get something out, get the 3 points out of that game. But like it's the sort of league where you don't really know every result. Treaty probably heartbroken not to get something out of the Peamount game. I thought they were probably the better side in the first half. I do want to say this, and it pains me to say it. It actually is criminal, and I've said it last week, and I'm going to say it again. It is actually criminal seeing Karen Duggan at centre back, one of their best. I know why he's doing it, because he has to do it, but it's actually criminal because she's the glue that makes Peamount tick. The youngsters and the likes of Jess Fitzgerald, the Freya Roaches, Ellen Doolans, yes, they're adding an awful lot more. I need to give a shout out to Eileen Ring from Cork, the Cork City fan, part of the Three Amigos podcast. I don't know if you've seen what she tweeted the other day. Freya Healy was part of a Arsenal side that played in the FIFA Blue Stars FIFA Youth Cup last week. Eagle Eye spotting it from Eileen as a guest player. Obviously, she cannot sign for any club till she's 18, so she's probably got another 18 months with Peamount. But interesting to see more and more of our youngsters start of getting more of a spotlight.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about Shamrock Rovers later on in the program. We're going to go a bit in depth into how their season is going. Not great is the top line, but we'll maybe look into why we think that is the case later on the show. Aaron, you mentioned Sarah. That is, of course, Sarah McKevitt. We're going to chat to her in just a few moments. But first of all, let's talk about the game. Sligo Rovers versus Bows in the showgrounds last Saturday evening. I think most people would have expected Bows to come down and take all 3 points. Didn't quite work out like that. Your thoughts before we hear from Sarah?
I'm not really surprised, and I've said this shit a couple of times. I don't think we're going to see the best of this Bows side for a while. And the one thing I will say is I hope the club are patient in terms of the transition that they probably had about 60% of new players in this year. A lot of young players in, some experienced players in. Like there were a lot of kids playing who haven't got an awful lot of National League experience. You look at Ava Brennan in midfield, Savannah Kane up top. They've a lot of players that don't have a lot of National League experience, so they're going to have to take the time building. I think from a Bows viewpoint, they'll probably look back at it as a bit disappointed. From Tommy Ewa, it's a home game. He would have been targeted in it. Like I think overall, probably a draw is probably a fair result in terms of the game. But I think like you can definitely see what Bows are trying to work on, and it was evident against Shells that it was just that little bit of experience in the second half when they lost the Dublin Derby. So I think they can go on a bit of a run and pick up some results. Sligo, I still think probably going to take a bit more time with Tommy as well, because it's a different system, different way of playing than they were used to. So I think in the grand scheme of things, both sides will probably think a point is a fair reflection.
Well, let's see maybe from the actual inside the camp at Dalymount and see what their thoughts on the game are. Of course, a big game tomorrow night. That's kind of why we have Bohemians represented on the show tonight. They take on, for the first time ever on European soil, the Palestinian international side. The women, of course, take to Dalymount Park tomorrow. They play Bohemians. It's going to be a cracking game, I think. And it doesn't even matter with the football. It's all about the occasion on that situation. But first of all, let's welcome Sarah McKevitt back to the show. Sarah, it's been a while. You're welcome back.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
The last time we spoke to you, you weren't in red and black. You were in a different colour. You've been around the block a few times now with different clubs in the league. How are you settling into Dalymount?
So far, so good. Absolutely love it. I've settled in really well with all the girls. I suppose I played with a lot of girls there before, so it was kind of easy. I had friends there already. I suppose there's a quite new squad as well. We've the younger players, as you were talking about, Ava Brennan and Sav, and then new management as well. So there's a lot of getting used to and a lot of building to be done.
When you're making that decision, Sarah, to come to Bows, like I know we won't get into it. There's a lot of talk last year. We're going to come last year. When you're making that decision, there was different management when you were potentially going to come last summer to now. What's that decision like still when you know the management are changing and you're sort of in the hunt for a new club during the off season?
I suppose I had my mind made up mid-season last year. And regardless of the change of management, I was still happy to sign for Bows. And thank God it all worked out. It took its time coming through, but thank God it all worked out. And I'm really happy about both at the moment.
Let's start with last weekend first. Trip to Sligo, disappointment in the camp with not to come away with all 3 points?
Yeah, I think we were quite disappointed at the end of it. The only thing there is positives to take from it, I suppose. You can see week on week we are getting better as we're going. I know we may not be scoring the goals, but they'll come. The goals will come. I suppose it's about being patient and just keep working. But yeah, we were disappointed on Saturday not to take 3 points home.
What's that conversation like as a team? Because like I said earlier, just before you come into us about the turnover in players and the younger players who maybe don't have the experience, and you're coming away with a 1-0 loss to Shells in a really close game where you probably could have nicked something if Shauna Carroll's effort that hits the crossbar goes in, and a draw away to Sligo. What are them sort of conversations like? Because it's fair to say it's a massive learning curve for a lot of people within that setup. It's Ken's first time in the hot seat as the manager as well. Like there's a lot of learnings going on at both.
I suppose results like that, they still show that we have potential. Like that game against Shells could have gone either way in the end. I know they supposed a bit of luck on their side, but I thought like it was a really good performance from our girls. But yeah, it's going to take time. I think, I suppose, as you were saying before I came on here, that it will take time to build the squad and getting the young players, getting their experience. I think before this we said I was the third oldest on the team, sure of experience and young players, so it'll come eventually, come right.
As you said, you've been around the league a few seasons now, more than the younger ones in the team. We've talked a lot about the gap between the weaker sides and the stronger sides getting smaller and smaller year on year. So the teams at the bottom of the league can still realistically go out to expect to compete with the top teams. What's your experience of maybe having games 4 or 5 years ago where you kind of knew going out you were going to win it 5 or 6-0 fairly comfortably? Those games don't really happen anymore in the league. What's your take on that?
Yeah, those games don't exist anymore. I think there's out of all 11 teams in the league, all teams are capable of taking points off each other. I do remember, I suppose, playing with Piedmont years ago. There were some matches you're going out to play and you knew you were winning the game 5 or 6-0. it was nearly, it takes the enjoyment out of it. Sometimes I kind of love the idea of being like, right, there's no easy games here. And the standard has gone up. I suppose that's the youngsters coming through as well. Like the standard of the players, like even the likes of Ava and Savados, like they're excellent and they're still more to come from them. They're only 16, 17. So it's great what's coming through the league, and that's what has bumped up the standard in the league.
How much of a benefit do you think, because it wasn't there when you were coming through, the likes of the underage leagues are? Because you talked to us a little bit off air about the youngsters and bows who are coming and training with the first team for the first time, who probably haven't experienced this. Whereas when you were first coming into the League of Ireland with Piedmont, there was sort of a case of it was nearly a fight or flight. There was no easing yourself in, because I remember when you're making your debut, you were young, was part of a really young team who sort of had to go out there and learn on the job.
Yeah, I feel like we were thrown in the deep end. I went from playing just with a team at home in Tipperary to playing against Karen Duggan. So it was a big jump for me. But I suppose, the platform that they have now, going from under 17s to under 19s, and then getting the chance to train. So I suppose if you're on an under 17s team, you get a chance to train with the seniors. As I said, like last night in training, one of the girls, Sophie, said she was 15, and I was like, I'm a full 10 years older than you. But it's great that they get that experience every now and again to come in and train with us. So we never had that, or I never had that anyway.
I suppose it's a weird dynamic for you, because the day job is a primary school teacher. So these are girls that are closer to way closer in age to the people you're teaching than to yourself. What do you have in common with a 15 or 16-year-old in the dressing room with you? Can you relate to each other? Do you have much of a relationship, or do you kind of stick to your own age groups in the dressing room?
It's a bit of a mixture. I suppose we do like stick to our own age groups, maybe on the bus and that, but I sit beside Ava Brennan in the dressing room, so trying to get conversation out of her could be tough sometimes. She doesn't want to talk to me sometimes. I think I'm too old. But no, there's a good bond like in the team at the moment, and everyone's kind of getting used to each other.
Does having, it's fair to say, world-class facilities, okay, people would say Dalymount needs improvement, that's on the way, but having like world-class facilities where you train in DCU and stuff like that, how much does that sort of thing help? Because you just have a room where you can go in and do analysis, and you can sort of break that little mold before training, for example.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Like you go in, we have the gym, you have the dressing rooms. It's all nice and warm, no cold dressing rooms. You have the analysis room, you have the physio room. Everything's just there for you on your doorstep, which is brilliant. There's times like some clubs I've been at and we're like, where are we training tonight? And we don't even know what pitch we're meant to be on. So it's in that regards, like it's massive. Just having a set training ground every week.
Let's chat for a second about, I suppose, the whole situation in the club in terms of the Palestine game tomorrow night. Obviously, it's a big night, very politically charged at the moment across the world, not just in Dublin, but over the last few months, there's been some really, really big things, I suppose, in Trinity College, and I suppose the Eurovision have been at the focus of this whole discussion. What's your personal take on tomorrow night's game? Are you happy to be involved? Are you looking forward to it? Or is it something you're kind of like, it's just another game?
We're all delighted to be involved. I suppose we actually can't wait. When we were first told back a couple of months ago, we couldn't really believe it, and we thought it would never happen. So it's after all coming around so quickly. I think it's just one of those things as well. It just shows that football is for everyone. Like no matter what's going on in the world, for 90 minutes tomorrow, it'll just be the enjoyment and the love for the game. So it'd be brilliant, and I can't wait.
What's that conversation like because there was muted talks that the FBI were trying to do something at a senior men international, and then both sort of come out. What's that conversation like with the players before it becomes official? Do you get sort of talk? Do you get asked, how would you feel? Are you interested? Or what how did that all, from a player viewpoint, how did it come about?
We didn't find out until it was confirmed. So I suppose it was made sure that it was all happening before they told us, and it wasn't, I suppose, the case of spreading rumors that this may or may not happen. So they had it set in stone before they told us, so they had confirmed it and then let us know straight away.
And some of your teammates, of course, been in and out of press conferences and to the Oris and all sorts of places to speak.
Yeah.
How surreal is it sometimes when you think about maybe 4 or 5 years ago when you started in the league, or maybe a little longer, from where you're getting like one man and his dog and family members at games to where you've sold out at like a quadruple the normal price, a €40 ticket sold out Dalymount Park, getting meeting to, or at least some of your teammates are getting brought to the Oris and meeting the Prime Minister or the the mayor of Dublin.
Present.
And this kind of this whole prestige around a fixture, it's a little bit surreal to be involved in a game of that size.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I feel like we actually won't realize how big it is until we're all there tomorrow. Like, obviously in our heads, like, yeah, it's massive. But even like last night when the message was sent out that all the tickets were sold out, like, that's 4,500 people coming to the game, which is insane. I still had people ask me for tickets today, and I'm there scraping tickets together for a few of my friends. Got them eventually, at least. But yeah, it's just people are mad to go. I feel like even since the Palestine team landed on Sunday, I think it's just after blowing up in the media and everything, which is brilliant. Everyone seems to know about it now, which is great.
When I say this, I'm not saying it in a bad way, but like, what is the madness like from a player viewpoint? Because the attention, everything is just, it's not like a normal game of football. Like, what is it like to be even involved and to be thinking that this time tomorrow, you'll probably be just kicked, you'll probably not be long into the second half.
Yeah, like, it's going to be a historic event. So we're all like delighted to be part of it. It's funny, like, I think about it then, it is just going out playing a match for 90 minutes, but you have all the acts playing. It's just, and again, the full stadium, all the media will be there, and it'll just be brilliant. It'll be great.
No Christy Moore, of course. Mary Black added to the bill last minute. In terms of yourself, I suppose one side of the thing that maybe hasn't been spoken about in the media this week is the security threat, because it's given the situation in the Middle East at the moment, and given maybe what came out of Eurovision with acts being disqualified or withdrawn or whatever that might have been. Is there a worry in your head? Have you spoken about contingency in terms of protests or in terms of any threats that might be out there to yourselves or the Palestinian players?
Not necessarily. Nothing has come up. None of us seem to be too worried about it. We haven't really noticed anything on social media in a negative way. Everything seems to be quite positive. And I'm sure it'll all be run quite smoothly tomorrow night as well.
In terms of that, you're making the drive into the Dalymount tomorrow. It's not a normal game, but like, we can say that. What's it going to be like? Because you're going to see, the place will be busier. You'll see probably some people at the pubs. You'll see a lot of flags out. People will be there early. Like, you go out to warm up, there'll probably be a lot more people there when you go to warm up than there will be. You will have had a lot of your games. Like, is it going to be any different, or how are you going to approach it?
Try to approach it like a normal game, but I just know I'll be so distracted. I suppose once you start running around though and kicking the ball, you'll probably switch off. But I can imagine just the sound alone in the stadium, I'd say, would be not what we're used to. Like, I think the most we've had at a game so far this year was 900, just about over 900, and a lot of those 900 would have been kids. But I feel like this is a more adult event. I feel like there's a lot of actual adults come to the game rather than groups of kids and children, I suppose.
Kids are people too.
Yeah, kids are people too, I know, but I feel like it'll be packed out with adults, and it'll be brilliant.
The young McKevitt fan club won't be there now, will it? The school kids are always there at all your games.
No, I've all my adult fan club, my mum and my dad and my brother. But yeah, none of the kids in school are coming. Not to this one. We'll get them to a game. They've already done Ball Girl already, so we'll get them to another one at a different stage.
Of course, this week, not just this fixture in the fixture list this week, you're playing Peamount in the Avenir Sports Cup. Kind of a winner-takes-all situation, the way the group has fallen. They have the edge going in, so a draw is good enough for Peamount to probably edge you out of that quarterfinal spot. If you had the choice, which is more important, the game tomorrow night for the experience or to get through that quarterfinal on Saturday?
Is this a case of which one would I rather play or which one would I rather win?
Well, I'll let you answer that.
I'd rather win on Saturday, I think. Which one would I rather play? Tomorrow night, historic event. Delighted to be part of. I don't that opportunity doesn't come around too often. But if I have to pick a win, I'd pick the win on Saturday.
Does the fact that it's a former club of yours make it a little bit extra?
Yeah.
At least you're honest. Nobody's ever.
No bad blood. It's all good.
You probably won't. You're probably going to say no, or you probably say yes, it does. But like, for a team like Bohs, how important is the Avenir Sports Cup? Massively important, because we see a lot of clubs maybe giving other players who haven't played a lot of football an opportunity. How important is this sort of competition? Like, is it something you're like, okay, we need to try players, but we also want to win? Or how do you balance that in terms of from a young squad?
I think at this stage, like all games are kind of equal importance, really. Like we go in with the same mindset and same way we want to win every game. Whether it's a Avenir Cup game, whether it's FAI Cup or just a league game, I think we're kind of going in with the same attitude, and they're all of equal importance at this stage. I suppose the cup only came in last year, and maybe with the World Cup on last year was kind of a hit or miss kind of competition. But I think a lot of teams are taking it a lot more serious this year, and everyone wants to reach cup finals.
Yeah, I don't think it's accidental that the winners last year, Galway, are sitting top of the league either. I think it helps to build morale and that kind of squad cohesiveness as well. Sarah, on a personal point of view, obviously you're getting used to life at Dalymount Park this year. You had a little bit of an enforced absence from the league for the second half of last season. It gave you that little bit of a time out, though, maybe. Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy that little break away from the game? Did it make you come back with a little bit more hunger for it?
I definitely, in that sense, did come back with more hunger. I suppose I was injured for the first half of the season, so I played 3 or 4 games with DLR in the first half of the season, and then obviously mid-season when I went to transfer, signing didn't go through. At the time, it was the worst thing in the world. It's the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And for about 2 or 3 weeks, even a month, it was awful going through it. I suppose myself and Dee for Breifne, we were left clubless, and just wasn't fair. But I did, I suppose, took advantage of the time off that you don't normally get. Did a bit of traveling, got to go away with a few of my friends to Thailand, got a little holiday with my brother, which I suppose I would never have the chance to do if I was playing football. So I did take advantage of it, but it wasn't the most ideal situation to be in. I wouldn't recommend it.
Must have been a bit weird though, Sarah. It's probably the first time since you started playing National League that you've had an extended break where you've been able to do something like that, because when you weren't in the League of Ireland, you were playing Gaelic football and vice versa. So like when you get an opportunity to do something like that, like do you do much sort of reflection on, the football and side of things? Because you say the first month or 2 was difficult. Like how did you get over the misfortune or the circumstances? Because there's no doubt when sport is nearly everything you do, how do you sort of break that mold of the upset or the disappointment?
Yeah, it was more so just taking advantage of the time off that I did have, and the weekends. Probably went home a bit more often. I don't get to go home too often anymore. I'd say I've been home twice this year, or 3 times this year actually, which isn't great. But my parents come up a bit, so it was nice to get that time off. And even my friends, like a lot of my home friends, I would have got to see a bit more of them because I was going home. And again, a bit of traveling that you don't get the chance to do. So you just have to take the positives out of it. Ideally, I would have been playing football. I remember in Thailand thinking my signing was going through, obviously, and I was in the gym like 3 or 4 times a week while on holidays, thinking I was going back to play League of Ireland football, but that didn't happen.
When some people get a taste for that kind of break, maybe they've been able to go out at will on a Friday night and have a few drinks with friends, or to book a city break somewhere, or to go home, they get a taste for it, and maybe the appetite's not quite there. Was that ever a thought that you might not come back to this level of football?
No, I think I missed it too much. I suppose I didn't play for the first half of the season plus the second half, so it was a whole year out of football. I feel like it's part of me that I feel like when I wasn't doing it, I was like, I'm not the footballer. So yeah, I missed it a lot, and like even being back in, I'm loving being back.
You say you weren't a footballer. I'd say in terms of, because you mentioned about your school kids doing ball girl at Bo's game. What's that sort of like for you? Because you're looked upon as Sarah, Miss McKevitt, the footballer, the role model for the younger kids in school. What's that like for you?
I love it. I think it's great. We have a lot of young girls in there playing soccer and playing with clubs, and I coach the school team in there as well. So it's great to see. I just think about when I was it's an all-girls primary school, and I went to an all-girls primary school myself. And there was we never really got the opportunity to play all the sports that they do and have all that. I'm jealous of the kids in my own school. Like I wish I was one of them when I was that age. But yeah, and it was great even to bring them out for ball girls. Like they love all that kind of stuff. And that was the thing. Like last year, they would have been coming to the games previously, and then I remember going back to school in September and like, oh, have you a match this weekend? And I had to how do you explain to an 11 or 12-year-old that someone somewhere has done something to your signing, and I don't have a match? And it went on for weeks. Do you have a match this weekend? No. Match this? No. So that I didn't like that part of it. it's like, how do you tell the kids I'm actually not signed for Bows? When I had told them that that's what I was doing. Didn't like that part of it. But then got to come back after Christmas and said, right, signing's gone through, and they've been at a couple of games now, which is great.
In terms of the season so far, we've seen some really impressive performances from certain clubs. Others maybe surprisingly not quite hitting the expectations they would have had for themselves. Who has impressed you outside of Dalymount? Which of the clubs or which of the players that you've seen or played against this year, you'd kind of say, oh, she really impressed me today?
I think I'd have to go with Galway for that, just the team in general. They're just so energetic. You can tell even just like when you're playing against them, just a good bond. They're really just working hard, really fit, and they're flying it. I suppose they're on that winning streak. I suppose you get that buzz, stay on that buzz, and that's what they seem to be doing, which is great for them. They'd be kind of the team that's standing out at the moment for me. I haven't played against them.
When you say about like teams who've standing out and stuff like that, how do you sort of get that to Bows? What's it going to take for Bows to get that sort of buzz momentum behind them? Do you think you're far from that? How far do you think you're probably away from being like that, the likes of a Galway? Because there's no doubt like a couple of years ago, Galway were probably in the position that Bows are in now. It's
hard to tell, I suppose. Like you can see week on week that everyone as a team we're getting closer. Like I think performances have gotten better. I suppose finding consistency, and sometimes it is a bit of luck as well, I think. Because even the game against Galway, we would have started off pretty strong. And like if you finish one of those chances that you get, the game can go either way. So sometimes it is a bit of luck as well. But yeah, I couldn't tell you how long it might take for it all to click, but hopefully soon.
Turn our attention to this weekend. Lisburn and Linfield and Lisburn meet on Friday night, and then you play Peamount. The way it's balanced at the moment, I think Linfield and Peamount have 4 points. You have 3, so you're pretty much a straight shootout with Peas. You obviously played there for a couple of seasons. You know those girls very well. There's been a couple of changes in PRL Park, but a lot of the squad is still the same. Any weaknesses that you're working on? Does Ken come and have a chat with you about having played at the club, or ask you about players, or is he on top of things like that himself?
Not yet. Honestly, I feel like with the game tomorrow night, we haven't actually been too focused on the weekend, really. I suppose game by game, we'll be training again during the week. So I think that'll be the night where we focus more in on Peamount and all that. So they haven't.
Is it a good distraction though, Sarah? You know, because you've such a big game the weekend to, you know, have something else taking your mind off it and not have the whole week focused on Peamount.
I don't know if it's a good distraction. It's a nice one to have though. Like I'm not complaining about it. I know like last week we all were quite aware that we had 3 games in 8 days, and I suppose the one in between was probably the one that we don't need to win the most. But no, I think it's a nice distraction. It's a nice one. To be going into a game tomorrow night and not actually being under the pressure of we have to win this game. It's more an occasion that we've been told to go out and enjoy. Like even at training last night, it was all Ken was just he was just on a buzz and just saying, girls, like you're not going to get this opportunity again. Go out and enjoy it. And that was it. There was no team talk or team tactics. It was just all about enjoying ourselves tomorrow night and taking in the moment, I suppose. So we haven't really fixated on it yet.
35 yards screamer tomorrow, is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have you found out who's playing? Are you starting the game, or do you know yet?
Haven't a clue. Don't know. I haven't a breeze. I actually couldn't tell you.
I'm guessing it'll probably be fairly relaxed, like a load of changes at halftime. Everyone kind of gets a chance.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll give everyone a run for the day that's in it. So yeah.
Of course, we are talking about the game tomorrow evening between Bohemians and Palestine women's national team. Sarah will be in red and black for the Bohemians in that game.
I wonder will she be in red and black? That's the question. White. I was wondering.
White and red and green. Yeah, Palestine.
Are you wearing the jersey from last year, the Palestine one?
Yeah,
with the flags on it?
That, but yeah, we are.
I actually thought I was hoping Bows would do that. I'm not going to lie, because
we have the one that the men had last year, and just a few tweaks on it, obviously.
Yeah, all proceeds from the game will be towards Sport for Life Palestine, Medical Aid for Palestinians, and Ackley Palestine, which sounds like an Irish name. I'm not quite sure what that is, but it's LAI, Palestine, on the ongoing human rights catastrophe in Palestine. The game itself is sold out. You can watch it on LOITV.ie. It's at €10. It's not included in the LOI TV season pass. And of course, that money going towards those charities as well. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us. The best of luck. Enjoy tomorrow evening, and the best of luck at the weekend.
Just on what you just said there as well, Breifne, that I know the tickets are sold out, but you can still show support by buying a non-attendance ticket as well. So that option is still there online.
I was literally going to say that next.
Yeah,
I didn't know that, but and also, of course, if you're into it, you can buy that jersey, I'm sure, as well. Bohemians, well used to kind of capitalizing on that and all going towards a fantastic cause. So, Sarah, best luck to you and your teammates tomorrow night. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a million. Thank you very much.
Sarah McKevitt there, ahead of what promises to be a watershed moment for so many parts of society, not just women's football, but 4,500 people, €40 a ticket. It's phenomenal to see that much support for the cause, but the fact that it's women's football is huge as well, Aaron.
Yeah, but the other side of it is you see a lot of Gaelic football stars being out and, marching because of the sport, what sport can do for this sort of movement. Like, the thing is, and we all see what's happening. We all see what's going on, and like the thing about it is to see this happening, and to see women being front and center of it. Like, I couldn't have imagined 5-10 years ago that we'd see women being the front and center of a big major event, in Dublin to do with this sort of cause. And it's brilliant. It's great to see. It's great to sort of have that sort of, as you say, the watershed moment. I'm looking forward to seeing what the atmosphere is going to be like tomorrow evening. Thankfully it's a success with ticket sales. I'll imagine it'd be success with jersey sales, with non-attendant tickets and people buying the match. I know it's also live directly in Palestine on local Palestine TV, which is brilliant as well. And I think it's come together very, very good. It was lovely to see them, go to the Irish the other day. I think the reception they got when they arrived in Dublin, they were out. They've been to the likes of Glendalough. They've been out and seen parts of Ireland, seeing sort of things and stuff like that. It's brilliant, and it's great to see. And as Sarah said, thankfully tomorrow, it's not all about results and stuff like that. It's about the occasion. It's about the moment and stuff like that. And there's no doubt it'll be a massive moment tomorrow evening in Dalymount. I can imagine the emotion within a lot of people will probably be quite high as well.
Absolutely. Turning our attention back towards the football at home, of course, we did at the top of the show go through all of the different results from the weekend, but maybe let's just take a quick look at the league table because we've had a bit of movement in that over the last couple of days. Galway United didn't play last weekend. They still are top of the league, but I suppose down towards the bottom of the league is where we are going to focus most of our attention for the next 15 minutes or so, is Shamrock Rovers in 9th place. That's a surprise from where we would have expected them to be maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks ago when the league kicked off. 0 wins from 6 games, 2 defeats on the bounce. Cork City last week, Peamount the week before. It's worrying times at Shamrock Rovers, Aaron.
It's massively worrying times, and the thing about it is a lot of people. We've sort of had this conversation yesterday off air about like if the magnitude of the investment is why a lot of people are probably having the bigger. It's worrying. It's not good times. Like, they haven't played great football this year. Like, on the pitch, they haven't played great football. DLR, the opening day of the season, a late penalty gets them a draw. Treaty, the back-to-back draws, the All-Ireland Cup, and in the league, they're having to chase goals. Shelbourne, you'll probably say they should have probably won the game. They probably should have beaten Shelbourne. They had the penalty save from Amanda McQuillan saving Anya O'Gorman's poor penalty, but then Leo O'Leary having a massive chance. Then you look at after that, you're sort of thinking, can they get on a bit of a run? Draw with Wexford. The Peamount results was sort of a bit of a telling tale that it wasn't really going well. And then the result against Cork, the biggest thing I can say is, and I tweeted this after the game, is to me it showed that Cork players just really wanted that result a lot more at the weekend. There's a lot of cracks. You hear a lot of murmurs. You hear a lot of rumblings of things happening. And it's a really difficult start to the season for them.
Well, before we get in depth into the discussion, let's maybe just frame where Shamrock Rovers have come from over the last 18 months. Of course, they were inaugural members of the league back in 2011, 2012, pulled out after a couple of seasons, just wasn't going well for them at the time. They came back in a huge fanfare about 18 months ago ahead of last season. And they came in with some pretty big interviews and pretty big statements about the professionalism that they were going to bring to the league. They've brought some of that, to be fair. The facilities they offer are second to none. The coaching ticket they brought in, second to none in terms of experience across the game in the country, more so maybe on the men's side than the women's, but still really, really experienced coaching ticket. They recruited players from everywhere. They brought in some of the best players from Peamount, Shelburne, Athlone, and other places, as well as their own underage academy. And they really promised to really set the league alight. And that just hasn't quite happened. Now, whether that's the players, the coaching, the club itself, I suppose the director of football comes into the conversation as well. Like, where do you think it's gone wrong for them? Or is it all just a little bit of, a bit from every single column on that list?
There's a bit from every single column, but the one thing for me, I think, is recruitment. It's just been star names. Let's go after the biggest name. Like, and I know from speaking to clubs, the amount of players that were called and asked, would they join Shamrock Rovers? I think from a Shamrock Rovers viewpoint, probably the biggest watershed moment for them is when Karen Duggan says no, because realistically, you probably have the entire Peamount team then if Karen says yes. But like, you're sort of trying to bring in players, and you look at last year's squad and you're sort of thinking, how is that going to work? How is this going to work? I think the problem with them is that they wanted to come in and make a splash. They wanted to come in, and I think they tried to do that even initially when they brought Collie O'Neill in as, big high profile manager, instead of coming in and being like, okay, right, let's spend a year, let's get a couple of players in of a bit of experience, see what our youth is, see where we are, let's build up. Because the problem is, from a Shamrock Rovers viewpoint, while they'll say no to this, when you spend the money that's reported to be spent and you have the players that's reported, the players that are coming in and the contracts that are supposedly on offer, the expectation is there that you're going to win the league straight off the bat. Yeah. And like, you even look at last year, there was quite a lot of draws. There was quite a lot of times where they struggled at things. I think this year you look at the start of the season, and we had conversations about it as it was happening. It's just, you see the sheer volume of players that was going out the door. A lot of players who would have come in last season, some of the younger players who would have been involved in academies and would have played underage for Shamrock Rovers. And you're sort of thinking, okay, how are they going to replace these players? And for me, I don't think they did replace the quality that they probably lost in terms of the actual squad itself. Like, there's not a lot of massive depth in terms of quality in certain positions. They've got players who are like Bows, who are lacking a lot of experience in the league. Like, it's great to see. I know that they tried to claim that it was the youngest League of Ireland goal, but it was an All Ireland Cup. Young Ella Kelly coming and scoring. Players like that. The problem is it's difficult to try and marry and come in when you set such big expectations of, we're coming in to change the league, and then the second season sort of flip happens. You're opening up yourself to a lot of criticism. You're opening up yourself to a lot of things. Whereas if they had done what's happening now last year, when only brought in limited number of players, you think, okay, it hasn't been a great start, but it's a building block and it's a stepping stone. But when you go to losing second place on the last day of the season and being beaten in a cup semi-final last year, to struggling and no wins after 6 and not looking like you're going to win a game, it's not a good look from the outside. The thing I will say is, and I said this to you off here, I do have that small fear that, could Shamrock Rovers eventually pull the plug and be like, it's a lot of money being spent, it's a lot of things. I hope that's never going to be the case, because the league as much as the league needs a strong Cork, a strong Treaty, strong teams in different regions, we also need the big clubs who are having a massive impact in the men's Premier Division in terms of attendances and stuff like that, to help drive the women's league on to be big, to be as big as it can be. Because you look at the attendances that they can generate at times. They can generate big attendances. They broke the record, I think, twice last year. You look at the rivalry with Shell that's growing massively. Like, the one thing I'll say on it is, like, when have you ever seen Peamount and Shelburne fans conjoining together to not want to see Rovers do something, compared to it used to be Peamount and Shell's rivalry was massive for years. So
But rivalries are healthy within the league, and I think you need that to encourage clubs to grow. And so having two sworn enemies coming together to cheer against the third opponent in the city is huge, you know. And I say more to that. Bring St. Pat's into the mix, bring other clubs into the mix as well if we can in the coming seasons. However, the Shamrock Rovers side last year came out, they won 13 out of 20 games. They only failed to win 7 times in the league. They're already at 6 from the first 6 games. Like, how sustainable is that? And we both know Collie O'Neill a long time. For me, it runs over 2 decades. The height of respect for him. I'd be concerned about someone with little to no knowledge of the women's game coming in. It might be the same game, but it's a different world, women's football and men's football. And it just doesn't seem to have worked. And now I'd never call for someone's head because I think Collie's one of the best coaches in the country, but it's not working.
It's not working, and the problem is like, it's all well and good bringing a great coach like that into the game, but you need to have the support of people who have been intertwined with women's football for a long time. Like, you look at Kieran Kilduff, what he done last year with Athlone. Kilduff had very limited experience apart from coaching a little bit in Minute. First thing he does is contacts Ken Kiernan. Will you come in with me? Someone who's a well reputation in women's football, because the coaching of women or girls is completely different to men. How they take the information, how they absorb, and how they go about it. So I think, like, realistically, in terms of yes, Collie would have wanted to bring his own staff in, but you probably need some more support in terms of around people who've had a lot of experience in coaching in women's football as well, to help and to guide them. Because the thing is, it's a massive learning curve for Collie, you know. And I've only ever heard Collie lose his rag once when he was manager of UCD, and that was when they were playing non-league Sheriff in the FAI Cup in the UCD Bowl, and you heard him swearing and all in the dressing room, and I was like, wow, I've never heard Collie doing that. And I think when you talk to Collie recognises that they can be better. Collie recognises they need to be better. But the problem is, from a Shamrock Rovers viewpoint, with a reputation that Shamrock Rovers have, is how long can Shamrock Rovers wait before they potentially have to pull that plug? And that's the question.
I think if it was a men's team, he'd be gone by already. And yes. I think in any club in the country, he'd be gone already. However, I think the women's game is different. And I'm glad to see he's not gone. It's the first stake on that. But I think they can turn it around. They definitely have the experience in that dressing room. Anya Gorman, Stephanie Roach, they may not have the legs of yesteryear. The girls coming through might be technically ahead of where they were when those girls were coming through. But I think they have a lot to add to a team. And I'm surprised to see Steph maybe not get as much game time as she has been getting this year. I think she can, maybe she's deadly finisher from anywhere inside about 25 yards. But it's the build-up play I think she brings. And yeah, fair enough, I know Steph and only go back 20 years. But I think the build-up, her involvement in build-up play and picking a pass and putting the girls with maybe the legs to run at defenders into play, I think is second to none in the league. And I was surprised not to see them come on, or Steph anyway, to come on earlier in the games where they've been chasing results in the last couple of weeks. I think she offers more on the pitch than she does in the dugout, if that makes sense.
But even the likes of Joy Ralph coming on there, probably needed to come on earlier in the game against Cork. Like I said to you when we had a conversation at the start of the season around Shamrock Rovers at the start of the season, one of the areas that I'd said to you is I thought they were very light in the likes of midfield. And it looks as though, like, the one thing you'd say is, how many leaders do they have as a even vocal and the sort of, because Anya's not a leader in terms of vocabulary and sort of shouting and screaming. Anya's a leader sort of on the pitch. And is Anya coming towards the end of her career? Probably is, yeah. And she's been a great servant to this league. She's been a good ambassador for Shamrock Rovers. But I think the one thing that Rovers lack probably at the minute is a little bit of leadership on the field as well. I think you can see there's a lot of younger players in that side that probably need that little bit of experience of somebody beside them. Just a little pull the arm and say,
I don't know if that's fair. I don't know if that's fair, because from what I've watched, the younger players haven't been the ones that have been underperforming. I think Aoife Kelly has impressed me nearly every time I've seen her in the last season and a half.
I'm gonna agree with you. But the problem is when you've got a squad like that, the younger players need to be 9, 10 out of 10 nearly every week for them to get a result. That's the problem. Whereas they're so reliant on a lot of these younger players that if they're not 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, like Leo O'Leary's been brilliant for them, absolutely brilliant for them. You're looking at a player like Maria Reynolds, hasn't played a lot of football in the last year. There's so much expected of players like that. And I think the problem is that they just need someone with a bit of experience around that to help them to take that little step to the next level. Because there's no doubt the likes of Eva Kelly has the potential to play for Ireland at senior level. There's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? They've got some quality players, but I just think they're lacking that little bit of experience in the midfield to sort of help the younger players to take that next step. Because you're right, them younger players have been very good for them. But the problem is when you're relying so much on younger players, they can only do so much at the start of their career, and it's difficult on them.
You win nothing with kids. Didn't Alex Ferguson prove them wrong on that score many, many years ago? In terms of where they go to from here, of course, we've got a trip to Crusaders on Saturday, I think, ahead of, in the last round of the Avenir Sports Cup. I stand corrected, that's actually Sunday afternoon. And a draw would be enough to put them into the quarterfinals. Is a run in that competition enough to maybe kickstart that little bit of confidence and that little bit of a momentum in that dressing room to push them on into their league campaign?
Colin O'Neill and Slim strongest starting 11 on Sunday and go and try and pummel them. Realistically, that's what he needs to do. He needs to go and try and get a little bit of confidence, because the problem is you look at their league fixtures a week later. They've Galway United coming to Tallaght Stadium live on TG Car. Massive game. That game defines their season. If they don't win that game against Galway, the season's written off completely. Is it too far? Is it probably too far? It's probably already enough to say they're not winning the league, but they could certainly go on a run and sort of put a lot of teams under pressure and win 10, 11 games. Yes, but they need to start. They need to start somewhere. I sort of thought when they beat DLR Waves in the cup the last time, they'd kick on that a little bit more, but they just didn't. But it's just about taking their chances when they get them, and like you can see at the minute they're not playing with a side of confidence. So like you look at the 2 goals they conceded at the weekend. The first one from the free kick in, Jess Hennessy doesn't get the header, and then the Cork player sort of comes in behind the other defender and sort of passes it into the net from close range. And then the second goal is just it's a lovely run and finish. But like then you have to look the other side, as we were saying about players who are playing well. Leo O'Leary with a lovely finish, but there's been times where Leo O'Leary has nearly had to single-handedly try and drag them through performances. I think Shelbourne in particular, Leo O'Leary was absolutely sublime in that game, and you just can't rely on 1 or 2 players. And I think that's probably the difference is just that some players are probably lacking a little bit of confidence, lacking a little bit of form. I also think missing Savannah McCarthy, someone with massive experience, even if you weren't playing her in centre back, if you were playing her probably in the 6, would help him midfield. But I think from a Colin O'Neill viewpoint and the Shamrock Rovers viewpoint, I think they need to just try and get to that window and just try and get a little bit of experience in. But it's a long time until that window opens in July.
Well, you talk about May and that game against Galway United at the end of the month, but the next 2 months are fairly winnable games. Maybe the Athlone game aside, which is a toss-up, but you're looking at a trip to Bohemians, trip to Sligo Rovers, home versus Athlone, which could be a banana skin for them again. They have a week off then, and then it's Treaty away, home against Cork before they make the trip to Galway on the 10th of August. So there's the potential there to really build up a bit of momentum against teams, with all due respect to the teams they're fixed against, that they would be expected to beat.
Said that last year about certain games when they're going for a title win, especially the Bows game in particular, where they go to Dalymount after beating them very convincingly in Tallaght and struggle over the line, struggle to win a 2-0 all draw. Like, you're right. The thing is, if they get that bit of momentum, if they get 1-2 wins, they are capable of going 3, 4, 5. And then you look at, as you say, in that run of fixtures, if they were to beat Galway and then they were to beat Bows, for example, you're then thinking they go in. Shamrock, Sligo Rovers still fancy that game. They got a nice last minute winner last year. The Athlone game, they go into that a lot of confidence. You know, you're then looking at the likes of Treaty to get revenge. Like, there is that possibility if they could get that little bit of a run going, they could win the 6-7 games in a row. But it's the other side of it is if they don't get the win against Galway, there's then the potential that they could go on that run to where Bows could take something. They're then looking over there. They're then looking at potentially Sligo doing what they done against Shelbourne, being sort of dogged, determined, and being hard to break down. Like, I think the biggest thing Collie O'Neill probably needs to do now is he probably needs to make some sort of changes, or just like, it's how do you break that mold? Because there's no doubt at the minute they're probably in a mold of a downward spiral. But if they can break it, they have quality.
What's your expectation of what's going to happen at Rovers over the next few weeks?
If I'm being honest about take away the All Ireland Cup game, I would probably say they'll probably cut out the next 4 league games. They'd probably be, if they probably come away with 6 points max.
Max. Yeah, fair enough. We'll come back to that maybe later on. We'll see how things develop at Shamrock Rovers. It is worrying for the club in terms of the fact that they're still winless at this stage of the season in the regular league, of course. Let's turn our attention to the fixtures happening this weekend. And of course, it's back to the Avenir Sports All-Ireland Cup this weekend. Linfield and Lisburn, they kick off matters in Midgley Park at 7:45 on Friday evening. Linfield need a draw to guarantee themselves a place in the quarterfinals, although they're very unlikely to miss out. Lisburn have had a poor enough start to the campaign so far, beaten by Piedmont and Bohemians so far. 10 goals in the minus column for them, haven't failed to find the back of the net so far. I can't really see them pushing on and challenging Linfield for that quarterfinal spot on.
No, and do you know what? The disappointing thing about this game is it's the only game that's not being streamed this weekend out of the All Ireland Cup. It's disappointing because the fact that every other one, I know it's two Northern Irish teams playing against each other, but I'd still have like to see that option be there. The problem with Lisburn is that they were sort of catapulted into this late on when Sion Swift folded, and you can see the gap between maybe when you go past the third, fourth best team in the NIFL. The gap is probably where we were a couple of years ago in terms of the league, and like it's been probably a baptism of fire for Lisburn, and I fully expect Linfield to come through probably
4 or 5
extremely comfortable.
Yeah, I watched their game against Piedmont, and Lisburn were just off the boil, unfortunately. In obviously, Piedmont and Bohemians, they face each other in that group as well. We've talked about that with Sarah earlier in the program. Win for Bohemians sees them into the quarterfinals at the expense of Piedmont, but Piedmont will be looking to get a result in that will see them into the
problem with this, Breifne. The problem with this game, right, is that this game is sort of a case that what do Piedmont do? Because Piedmont are really light on bodies. So how do you Piedmont are the one team that are going to have to manage their squad massively in terms of these sort of games, because there's no real major break coming up until after the international. So they've got this game, and then they've got next week before they have the international break. So it's how do you sort of manage them 2 games, because they've played a lot of games in concession. Because if you look at Piedmont's idle week, it was quite a while ago. So they've actually played quite a few games in a row, and James is being reliant on the same 13, 14 players. Granted, he's getting some players coming back from injury, but I think James will probably just have to be a bit cautious this weekend in terms of his team selection. And if Bows are to get something out, but Bows are probably going to have to be at about a 9 out of 10 to get a result in it, though.
As long as there's no hangover from tomorrow night in terms of the atmosphere and the event that tomorrow night promises to be. In Group B, it's Wexford and Shells, top of the table. A draw will see both sides through to the quarterfinals at the expense of Cork City and Cliftonville. The massive swing required in goal difference here probably means Cork versus Cliftonville is probably somewhat of a dead rubber. But a big win for either side could see them overtake if results in Wexford go their way. A big game in Ferrycarrig Park. That game kicks off at 6 o'clock, while Cork City and Cliftonville will already have played at 4 p.m. I'm not sure I'm that comfortable with the final games all happening at different times. It kind of makes it an awful lot easier for Wexford and Shells if they know what the outcome is in the game earlier in the day, but that will remain to be seen. I can't see anyone other than Wexford and Shells qualifying out of that group, Aaron.
Do you know what? This is very strange, because you look at this, and yes, Wexford are 4 points. They limped over the line to get a draw against Cork in their first game, and then go and probably batter Cliftonville, where we probably didn't expect it. Like, they're another side when we talk about Shamrock Rovers. But maybe the reason why we're not talking about Wexford in the sort of category the way we're talking about Shamrock Rovers is because Wexford struggled last year, and we could see evident that Wexford have been struggling for the last 18 months, and they sort of haven't been able to break that mold themselves. Like, this is a game for them. Whereas, as you say, if they go out and lose 1-0 to Shells, they're into a quarter final of a cup. Can they sort of build that bit of momentum as well and get a bit of a run going? This will be an interesting one from a Shell viewpoint, because Owen Warren did make a couple of changes against DLR to sort of give players a bit of a run. I suspect he may do something similar again, just continue to manage his squad. But like, you'd have to say Shell's a favourite in that. And then in the other game, it's a long travel. It's a long travel for Cliftonville. We've seen what happened when they travel to Wexford, and can they put in a performance? Cork are on good form. I think Cork will be eyeing another victory here, I think.
Yeah, I think I wonder which Cliftonville side will travel there at the start of their league campaign. They might be quite happy just to send down a kind of a reserve outfit and see how they get on, knowing that it's a very unlikely. They need nearly a 10 or 11-0 win to turn around the goal difference in that division at the moment. In Group C, Shamrock Rovers and Treaty are top of the pile. They, of course, don't play each other both away. Treaty travel to Whitehall, home farm, to play DLR Waves. No one, with probably any result really, will see them through in terms of the other game. Shamrock Rovers are away to Crusaders on Sunday afternoon at 2:00. They'll know what they have to do, but a draw there should be enough for Rovers to see them into the quarterfinals of the competition. Treaty, again, avoiding a massive defeat, should be through regardless, unless Crusaders go out and beat Shamrock Rovers, but that remains to be seen how that happens over the weekend.
Definitely fancy two away wins in that.
I would expect so. Athlone and Galway, they face each other at the weekend to decide who will top the group and who gets home advantage in that quarterfinal. Sligo Rovers and Glentoran both out of the competition as it stands. They meet now at 6 p.m. on Sunday evening in a refixed game. But I'm not quite sure why it's gone so late, but I suppose it suits the two sides who are both in the northern half of the island. So they'll play each other on Sunday afternoon. Irrelevant in terms of the fixture, in terms of the result, it will be Galway and Athlone through to the quarterfinals.
I'm going to sound like a bit of a how would you say, a bit of a downer on that game. I think that game's probably going to be a dull, dreary affair. I suspect both managers will make some changes. The only thing I will say is, and it's like Cork, it's like the likes of Cork when they go into certain games about making changes, is that you have to be careful in these sort of games. If you're going to give players a run, that you're not going to make it look that I'm only giving it because it's a dead rubber. But I think both teams won't really have a massive. I don't think it really matters who tops that group, because realistically, if you top the group or if you finish second, them sides will really fancy beating anybody on their day. So it's not as if it's a case of finishing first or second. I think for both managers, it's probably going to be a case of, if I get a win, great, but get me out of this game without any injuries.
You're going to the game tomorrow night against Palestine. Looking forward to it, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to be like. The occasion, I suspect it'll be an interesting one, just in terms of the whole getting in and around the place. Hopefully, it goes off smooth. I know Paul's put an awful lot of work into making sure this works. I think in terms of the stadium itself, I'm curious to see what sort of fans will be there, because it's not a case that it's going to be, just normal football, normal Bows fans. There'll be a large content of normal Bows members and stuff like that, because I think the Jody went quite quick. But I think there'll be a lot of people who are probably going to potentially watch women's football in this country for the first time. And I think it's a good opportunity to highlight. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. And hopefully it goes through. It's a great night, but it's a good opportunity for the Bows girls, and I'm happy to see that female sport is taking a massive front here in this situation.
Yeah, of course, the fixtures for the weekend, as you mentioned, just scrolling along the bottom of the page. But that's it from us this week. Thanks so much to Sarah McKevitt, who came in, and what's a pretty exciting week for her, hosting the Palestinian national women's team tomorrow night as part of Bohemians Football Club, and then a little trip back to her old stomping ground of PRL Park on Saturday to try and put them out of the Avenir Sports Cup. And she very honestly said it would mean a little bit more given the fact that it's an old club. Normally people are a bit more diplomatic than that. So kudos to Sarah for saying it as it is and telling us what we all really knew.
Breifne, just before we do go off air, there's some interesting news just sort of popping on social media tonight. John Fallon and the Irish Examiner is reporting that Porky Queeve is in the frame to potentially host the Ireland-France qualifier game. Venue for that is probably due to drop within the next week or so, I'd say, at this stage, because they're getting to the stage where they're going to have to tell UEFA where that game is going to be. And with Dublin more than likely ruled out, it looks like it's probably going to go to Cork, and Denise O'Sullivan get her wish to play a senior international in a big stadium in Cork.
Yeah, it would be nice for Denise. Things aren't going quite so well for North Carolina Courage in the NWSL at the moment. Another defeat this week. It would be nice for her for a little pick-me-up after what's been a rough start to the season for her in the States. That is it from us this week. Aaron, thanks as always for joining me, and to Sarah McKevitt for joining us earlier in the show. We will be back with you again next week. So much to talk about. We'll be back then. Chat to you soon.